This is Pakistan, a country in South Asia. Created in 1947 after a partition from India, Pakistan is located between India and Afghanistan. Here, nearly 140 million people converse in 6 major languages and practice a variety of very diverse cultures. Like many other South Asian countries, Pakistan has a developing national economy, but is struggling with social and economic imbalance. The literacy rate is only 26%, and most people live beneath the poverty line. These factors fuel issues like child labor and human trafficking. Pakistan and other South Asian countries continue to struggle with these problems, even as they try to strengthen their economies and stabilize regional politics. Organizations like Vision and the Society for the Protection of the Rights of the Child, or SPARC, have been fighting child trafficking in Pakistan for almost a decade. Vision, a South Asian non-profit organization, has been fighting child trafficking while working with marginalized and stigmatized populations.
The Pakistani situation, when you look at it in a more socio-economic context, what you find happening is that there are compulsions. Surely, poverty was a major factor that was basically, motivating parents to let their children go, irrespective of where they were taken. There are 12 people living in a house, and one child can send you 8,000 a month, or 5,000 a month, or 6,000 a month. You are basically sacrificing one at the altar for 11 others.
Pakistan has several laws to protect child rights. Provincial courts, however, sometimes conflict with these laws, making implementation difficult at the regional level. Trafficking is another word that needs to be clearly defined. The United Nations defines trafficking as procurement, transfer, harboring, or receipt of persons who have been displaced through force, coercion, or some kind of payment, with or without consent, leading ultimately to exploitation. In 2004, Tahir heard reports from another non-profit organization that boys were being put to work as underage laborers in several shipbreaking yards in Gadani, a small coastal town 50 miles from Karachi, Pakistan's largest city. This was the beginning of our exploration. Since Gadani is located in Balochistan, Balochi is the language of choice, but Urdu, Pakistan's national language, is widely understood. With miles of easily accessible shoreline, Gadani is one of only a few coastal cities in Asia and Africa where shipbreaking yards can be found today. Though Gadani has several popular beaches, fishing and shipbreaking remain the primary sources of revenue. Obsolete ships are sailed to the shipbreaking yards where laborers break them into smaller pieces. Most of the ships now being broken were manufactured during the 1940s and 1950s, when asbestos, cadmium, and other poisonous elements were still commonly used in ship manufacture. Environmental regulations and laws have now banned these poisonous elements and issued regulations to protect laborers working with poisoned materials. Pakistan, like many other South Asian countries, does not have such regulations. In the absence of regulations, laborers are vulnerable. Working in this toxic environment, children working in Gadani's shipyards risk cancer, brain damage, and even death. Scrapped ships have many useful fixtures, as well as the scrap iron, which provides both revenue and raw materials for many of Pakistan's industries. Locals and fishermen are not eager to work in Gadani's shipyards, where the salary barely compensates for the hard work and long hours. The question then becomes, where do these laborers come from?
तो आता किस तरह उनका किसके साथ आता है? ठेकेदार का जरिया। तो ठेकेदार कहाँ का होता है? पख्तून होता है इधर का होता है? पख्तून है ज़्यादा। ज़्यादा पख्तून। सारा पख्तून है।
This man runs a boarding facility in Gadani. He is a Pashtun from Swat and runs the motel during shipbreaking seasons. We were worried by what we saw in the shipyards. That day, the temperature was almost 120 degrees Fahrenheit. With no shade in sight, workers were operating high-output welding torches while wearing inadequate gear. It was here that we first saw the boys. According to the United States Center for Disease Control, high temperatures and exertion can cause heat stress, which can be fatal to children.
Most of them looked older than actually their age. And there were boys about 14, 15, 16, late teens, but because where they were, the kind of work they were doing, they all looked more or less alike when you see them from afar. But as we got closer to them, we noticed that many of them were very young, and the kind of work they were doing was a big shock for all of us.
These boys are between 15 and 17 years of age. Our cameras allowed us to forge a link with them and help them feel comfortable with us.
These children were surely not from the area. They were, on the contrary, were from another part of Pakistan. So there was no family that had moved. It was mainly the boys that had moved. These children had no direct way of connecting with their families. So for me, that was enough to tell me that these children had been trafficked.
To find out more, we spoke to the customers in tea houses across the street from the shipbreaking yards. Here, most shipyard laborers get the chance to kick back and relax with friends and co-workers. Many of the Pashtun boys working in the shipyards at Gadani are from Swat, a mountainous region in the NWFP or Northwest Frontier Province. It takes 2 long days to travel by bus from Swat to Karachi and then to Gadani. These overcrowded buses are the only cheap and accessible mode of transport. As underage laborers in the shipyards, what kind of legal protection would these boys have? Several ordinances protect the rights of laborers and children. However, contradictions make it difficult to determine what laws to apply. We wanted to interview the boys, but these boys and men were not entirely comfortable with our presence. At the same time, we could not, under any circumstances, refer to taboo issues such as trafficking, abuse, and molestation. Talking about these issues would be culturally unacceptable. In 2004, the United States Department of State estimated that 600,000 to 800,000 men, women, and children are being trafficked across international borders each year. The reasons for trafficking include, but are not limited to, labor and sex trade. We brought some paper and colored markers with us to Gadani and asked the boys if they were interested in drawing something for us. We thought we might be able to gain an insight into their lives through their art and perhaps even ask a few questions. 14-year-old Aziz Ahmed is an apprentice welder in the shipyards. His is an unfortunate but familiar story.
गुर्बत, लेकिन इसने की लिखा है लेकिन पश्तो में लिखा है। अच्छा। की वजह से कराची आई और इस गर्मी में बेयार और मददगार जिंदगी गुजार रहा हूं। अच्छा।
Muhammad Nawab is only 16 years old. Demanding physical labor has toughened him. Yet, he misses home as only a child can.
इधर पूल होता है? किधर होता है?
इधर नहीं होता है, गाँव में होता है।
गाँव में होता है? अच्छा, गाँव में कौन सा पूल होता है?
गाँव का हर किस्म पूल होता है।
अच्छा।
Not only are the working conditions unfit for adults and children, living conditions place many of the younger laborers in a vulnerable position. Pakistan's annual budget is announced each year in July, usually signaling a boom in shipbreaking activity. During the peak of the shipbreaking season, 5 to 7 boys and men live in cramped quarters like these.
It is a very vulnerable situation for any child who does not have that power of resistance or is isolated and in a situation where he's sharing spaces with adults and those spaces are not monitored. And when I say monitored, monitoring means monitored very vigilantly. So my first issue with Gadani was that there was sharing of spaces between children and adults. They were using the same living and sleeping spaces, and that is a very vulnerable situation for any child.
What is making these boys so vulnerable to exploitation and trafficking? Tahir is convinced that the answer lies in Swat. Swat is a beautiful mountainous area located in the NWFP. Saidu Sharif, one of Swat's larger cities, was once a popular resort. Decline in tourism, arts and crafts has led to a shortage of employment opportunities. The resulting poverty lays many young people vulnerable to exploitation. The main bus station at Saidu Sharif is a bustling hub of activity. People are everywhere, on the platforms, under buses, everywhere. Most of these buses will soon leave for Karachi with many young people on board. But how many of these young travelers are actually leaving Swat to look for work?
तकरीबन 12, 13, 15 साल।
किसी खास वजह से जाते हैं क्या?
वहाँ मजदूरी करने के लिए जाते हैं।
कुछ अंदाजा आपको किस किस्म की मजदूरी करते हैं उधर?
वहाँ तो बस कभी कोई मिल में काम करता है, कोई गड़ाने में काम करता है, ये जाज वगैरह का काम करता है, स्प्रे जो है।
ऐसा भी होता है कि एक बंदा जो है वो ज़्यादा लोगों के टिकट ले रहा हो, होता है ऐसा? तो क्या मतलब वो क्या फैमिली का होता है कि वैसे भी आमतौर तो फैमिली के अलावा भी इस तरह होता है?
हाँ, इधर फैमिली में नहीं होता।
अच्छा,
इधर सारा ये लोग मजदूरी के लिए जाता है।
अच्छा,
हाँ, ये सब ग्रुप जाता है 10, 20, 25, 30।
अच्छा, तो आमतौर पे क्या उम्रें होती हैं जो उम्रें?
ऐसे उम्र में भी होते हैं, ऐसे में भी होते हैं, हमारे में भी होता है, बूढ़ा भी होता है।
इसकी उम्र तकरीबन कितनी होगी?
इसके 15-16 साल होगा।
15-16 साल।
मुसाफरी मुसाफरी सख्त ख्वारदनो जमाजारी दा।
Meanwhile, in Gadani, these boys live lives where every day the shadow of death hovers over them. According to the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, trafficking is a crime and trafficked persons must be treated as victims of crime. Shipbreaking is a key industry for Pakistan's economy, and much is at stake here. Gadani must be thoroughly explored. Community-based approaches must be devised. These boys have been victimized and exploited, but there is no reason for the exploitation to continue. Working long months of mind-numbing labor, far from their families and friends, these boys soon find a barren desert in their hearts. Here, where once hopes and dreams flowered, childhood innocence is now a stranger.
Ya kurban مسافری مسافری سخت خواری دوا زما زاری